The house felt different now, quieter than it had ever been. Each room carried echoes of laughter, footsteps, and voices that had once filled the air. She stood in the hallway, running her hand along the wall, feeling the stillness pressing in around her. The children were grown, living lives of their own, far from this place. She breathed deeply, aware that something had ended. But something else was waiting. At breakfast, the silence felt heavy, but not unkind. Her husband sat across from her, sipping his coffee slowly, watching her with gentle eyes. They both felt the absence, but they also sensed the possibility of space. Hope began to stir inside her heart, subtle but steady, reminding her that emptiness could also mean freedom. Courage whispered softly that perhaps life had more in store. She wandered into the living room and paused by the family photos. Smiling faces of the children, captured in time, lined the shelves. They told a story of love and growth, but also of years that had flown too quickly. She realized with sudden clarity that their journey as parents had been a chapter, not the entire book. New beginnings waited beyond these frames. Later, she climbed into the attic and opened a dusty trunk. Inside were maps, postcards, and a faded compass, treasures from younger days. Memories washed over her like warm sunlight, filling her with gratitude for the adventures they had already shared. Yet even as she touched the old objects, she felt a longing rise. Purpose seemed to beckon her toward the open road again. That evening, she sat with her husband in the quiet living room. The house creaked as if reminding them of the life it had sheltered. He reached for her hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. They didn't need to speak. They both felt the same pull. Something was ending, but life transformation was knocking on their door. As dusk settled outside, she opened the window and let the cool breeze in. The air carried with it a sense of freedom, of movement, of possibility. She realized that hope could be found not only in holding on but in letting go. Courage was not about staying safe, but about stepping into the unknown. The quiet house was not an ending, it was a beginning. That night, as she prepared for bed, she whispered a promise to herself. She would no longer let silence feel like loss. Instead, it would become the canvas for something new. Tomorrow might bring the same walls and the same rooms, but her heart was already elsewhere. She fell asleep, imagining roads stretching across the horizon, and with that vision, the journey had already begun. The next morning, the idea came softly, like a spark waiting to ignite. As they shared coffee at the kitchen table, her husband unfolded a map he had tucked away. "What if we just drove?" he asked, his eyes filled with gentle excitement. She looked at him, surprised but intrigued, as hope leaped forward inside her chest. The thought of a road trip stirred something she had forgotten. At first, she hesitated, questioning the practicality of such a journey. Were they too old? Would the miles be too long? But as she studied the map, she saw routes that stretched across mountains, rivers, and coasts. She imagined herself standing in new places, hearing unfamiliar voices, and breathing in fresh air. Courage pushed away her doubts, whispering that the adventure might be exactly what they needed. He spoke about the open road with a boyish grin, describing the places he longed to see again. She found herself laughing, remembering the thrill of their younger travels. Suddenly, she realized that their story was not finished. It had only paused. Resilience rose within her, reminding her of how much they had already overcome together. Why not add one more chapter of discovery? They traced possible routes with their fingers, imagining the journey before it even began. The Blue Ridge Parkway, the Great Smoky Mountains, the Mississippi River, the vast deserts, and the endless Pacific Ocean. Each destination carried a promise of renewal, of fresh perspective. New beginnings could be mapped out, but they would also surprise them along the way. The thought made her heart beat faster. Practical questions arose, but they didn't feel overwhelming. What to pack, where to stay, how far to drive each day. These were not obstacles, but stepping stones. They spoke of camping, roadside diners, and little towns no one talked about. Each detail felt like a brushstroke on the canvas of their future. Purpose began to shape itself into the form of a journey. That night, she walked through the house differently. The quiet no longer felt heavy but filled with anticipation. Every room whispered, "Go, see, live." She realized that what they needed was not to escape their life, but to embrace it more fully. Hope gleamed like a lantern, lighting the way forward. Courage promised that the unknown would not be frightening but liberating. Before they went to bed, he folded the map and set it on the nightstand. She leaned against him, her heart steady and full. Tomorrow, they would begin preparations, but tonight, they dreamed. Life transformation does not begin with a packed suitcase, it begins with the decision to step forward. And with that simple conversation, their journey had already taken its first breath. The bedroom became a stage of preparation as suitcases lay open, waiting to be filled. She folded clothes with practiced hands, slipping in both practicality and sentiment. A favorite scarf, comfortable shoes, and a journal titled Letters to Today found their places. Her husband moved through the room with lists and maps, making sure nothing was forgotten. Hope seemed to settle into the corners of the bags. They paused to call their children before leaving. Smiling faces appeared on the screen, their voices full of warmth and encouragement. "Send us photos," their daughter insisted playfully. Their son added, "Don't forget to try new foods." The conversation carried more love than worry, filling the house with courage and laughter. They ended the call with hearts lightened. Outside, neighbors waved as they loaded the car. One promised to water the garden, another to collect the mail. She handed over a spare key, grateful for the community that surrounded them. Resilience often grows stronger through small acts of support. With each wave goodbye, the journey ahead felt more real and more possible. Inside the house, they took one last walk. Every room whispered memories of birthdays, holidays, and quiet nights. But rather than sadness, she felt a gentle release. The walls seemed to bless them, urging them to go forward. Life transformation often begins with gratitude for what has been. They closed the door softly, carrying the past with them. On the driveway, he unfolded the map once more. Together, they traced the route, their fingers lingering on mountain curves and coastal lines. The miles no longer looked intimidating, but inviting. New beginnings stretched before them like open arms. They laughed quietly, ready to embrace whatever the road would bring. Purpose felt tangible, like something they could hold. Before stepping into the car, they hugged in the early light. It was not a farewell to home, but a promise to return with new stories. She felt courage rise as his arms held her steady. He whispered, "This is ours." The journey was no longer just an idea, it was their shared commitment. But the engine humming beneath them, they pulled away. The streets stretched wide, welcoming them into movement. Birds lifted from trees, as though in celebration. Hope shimmered in the morning air, filling their lungs. The horizon became both destination and invitation, pulling them toward. The Blue Ridge Parkway opened before them, a ribbon of green and blue. Mist curled through valleys, and the air smelled of pine and promise. She leaned her head back against the seat, feeling the weight of the years lift. Courage threaded through her veins as the road carried them forward. Every curve seemed to whisper of new beginnings. At an overlook, they pulled aside to breathe it all in. The mountains stood tall and generous, cloaked in morning light. He poured coffee from a thermos, and the steam rose like a blessing. She opened her journal and wrote, "Today, I choose freedom." Hope bloomed in her chest as the words flowed onto the page. A short wait at a construction stop tested their patience. Orange cones and flaggers slowed the traffic, forcing them to pause. She glanced at him, expecting frustration, but instead found a calm smile. Resilience reminded them that not every delay is a loss. Sometimes the pause itself is part of the journey. When rain began to sprinkle across the windshield, he switched on the wipers. They laughed as an old song came on the radio, singing along badly but joyfully. She forgot the drizzle and felt years younger in that moment. Life transformation often hides in laughter between storms. The road felt like a companion instead of a challenge. As the day stretched, they stopped for fresh fruit at a roadside stand. A farmer handed them peaches with a knowing smile. Juice ran down their fingers as they ate, sweet and grounding. "Good roads ahead," the farmer said with a wave. Purpose sometimes arrives in the simplest encounters. By evening, they reached a lodge nestled among trees. Rocking chairs lined the porch, inviting them to sit and rest. They shared apple pie while the sun sank behind the ridges. The mountains seemed to wrap around them like guardians. Hope settled over them gently, promising more beauty tomorrow. She traced their route on the map before bed, circling the next town. He nodded, already half asleep, trusting the journey to unfold. The road ahead remained uncertain, but no longer intimidating. Courage kept them steady, and resilience promised endurance. Tomorrow would bring the first climb into the mountains. Morning arrived with mist lingering over the Smokies, soft and mysterious. They laced their shoes for a short hike, eager to explore. Her knees protested, reminding her of age, but she pressed forward. He slowed his pace to match hers, offering quiet encouragement. Hope rose with each careful step up the trail. At a vista, the clouds lifted, unveiling a breathtaking expanse. Valleys stretched endlessly, dotted with forests painted in green. She gasped, overcome by the magnitude of it all. "We are so small," she whispered, but without fear. Courage sometimes means recognizing humility in the face of greatness. They met a couple from Ohio resting nearby. Stories flowed easily between them, tales of family, travel, and resilience. Each couple had faced challenges, but found strength in moving forward. Their laughter echoed against the mountains, proof that new beginnings can connect strangers. Purpose shone in the bonds of shared experience. On the way back, a rattling sound worried them. The roof rack had loosened under the road's strain. He adjusted it with practiced hands while she held the strap. It was a small inconvenience, but together they solved it quickly. Resilience often proves itself in ordinary challenges. They drove on with relief and renewed trust. They found a quiet stream and stopped for lunch. She dipped her hands in the cold water, feeling refreshed. They shared strawberries and crackers, savoring the taste of simplicity. "This feels like enough," she said softly. Life transformation often hides in moments of stillness. The late afternoon light painted the forest gold. They walked slowly, refusing to hurry through the beauty. Birds called from the treetops, adding music to the air. Hope sang along with them, sweet and strong. Courage whispered that they were exactly where they needed to be that night. In a small cabin with a crackling fire, they reflected. "The mountains remind us to stand tall," he said. She nodded, adding, "and to bend when needed. New beginnings often come with lessons from the earth." Tomorrow, the road would take them into music towns. Nashville greeted them with music spilling from every corner. Guitars and fiddles painted the air with rhythm, and the streets pulsed with energy. She felt her spirit rise, remembering her love for songs that told stories. He smiled as they walked hand in hand through the crowded sidewalks. Hope hummed along with every note around them. At a cafe, they sat near a young musician. Curious, he asked about their journey and listened with wide eyes. In return, he spoke of chasing dreams, performing wherever someone would listen. She admired his courage and saw her own reflection in his words. New beginnings often emerge through the bravery of others. Later, a flat tire tested their patience on the city's edge. He guided the car safely to the shoulder while she steadied her nerves. Together, they worked to replace it, fumbling but persistent. A kind stranger stopped to lend them a jack, smiling warmly. Resilience was found in teamwork and in accepting help. Grease streaked her cheek, making them both laugh. "You look like a true mechanic," he teased gently. Their small victory tasted sweeter because they faced it together. Life transformation sometimes arrives in ordinary struggles. The car rolled forward again, carrying their laughter with it. That evening, they walked along the Mississippi River in Memphis. The water shimmered under the fading sun, reflecting history and hope. They leaned against the railing, breathing in the calm after a hectic day. Courage had carried them through, leaving them stronger. Purpose grew from facing the unexpected with grace. Families picnicked nearby, offering food and stories. They joined in, sharing jokes and memories with strangers. It amazed her how quickly connections could form on the road. New beginnings, sometimes wear the face of kindness. Hope followed them back to their hotel like a trusted friend. As she closed her journal that night, she wrote, "People are bridges across miles." He added, "And bridges carry us safely forward." They both smiled, feeling proud of what the day had taught them. Tomorrow, new challenges would surely come, but they were ready. New Orleans embraced them with color and song. They walked streets alive with jazz, laughter, and the scent of powdered sugar. Beignets melted on their tongues, filling them with sweetness. Hope sparkled through the morning air, carrying a sense of joy. Courage seemed to dance in every note around them. But the day quickly tested their patience. A flooded street blocked their planned route, orange barricades halting progress. She sighed, frustration rising at the inconvenience. He placed a hand on hers and said, "Let's take another way." Resilience reminded them that detours are simply new directions. The heat pressed down heavily as noon arrived. She felt dizzy and tired, her energy slipping away. He guided her into the shade of a large oak tree. Water and rest revived her slowly, easing her discomfort. Life transformation often requires honoring the body's needs. Later, a disagreement flared between them. She wanted to stop for photos, but he longed for cool shade. Their voices softened as they realized compromise was possible. They agreed to split their time, meeting both needs. Courage often lives in the practice of listening. In the market square, they discovered a local artist. His paintings of rivers and lighthouses spoke to their hearts. She chose the flowing river. He chose the guiding light. Together, they carried symbols of purpose and direction. New beginnings sometimes come as art to be cherished. The detour led them into unexpected delight. A small market offered fresh peaches and friendly conversation. They laughed as juice dripped down their hands, feeling lighter. Resilience had turned frustration into joy. Hope glowed in the simplicity of shared fruit. By dusk, they crossed into Texas, where the horizon stretched endlessly. The sky painted itself in shades of pink and gold. She leaned her head on his shoulder, grateful for the day's lessons. The road ahead promised wide open spaces. The diner's neon sign blinked like a welcome. They slid into a booth, ordering pecan pie and hot coffee. The waitress asked about their travels, listening with interest. "Send me a postcard," she said with a grin. Hope lingered in the kindness of strangers later. They stumbled upon a chilly tables lined the square, each offering bowls of fiery pride. He preferred the smoky heat, while she leaned toward mild comfort. They laughed at their playful debate, enjoying the contrast. New beginnings savor the taste of small differences. At the farmer's market, peaches glistened under the sun. They bought two and bit into them immediately. Juice ran down their wrists, sticky but joyful. "This is what summer feels like," she said. Purpose sometimes means embracing simple pleasures. In a small bookstore tucked between shops, treasures waited. She discovered a book of poems about rivers and roads. He found a memoir traced in maps and memories. Their basket balanced art and direction, heart and head. Resilience loves when learning meets inspiration. The car's air conditioner sputtered, raising concern. They found a nearby garage with honest mechanics. A quick repair restored cool air to their journey. Life transformation doesn't require grand gestures, just honest help. Courage thanks even the smallest kindness. That night, they camped beneath a quilt of stars. Crickets sang as they shared stories by lantern light. She read poems aloud while he listened quietly. Hope glowed in the steady warmth between them. New beginnings rested in the hush of night. As she drifted to sleep, she whispered, "Food and stories make places feel human." He replied softly, "And people season the miles." Their smiles faded into dreams of tomorrow's canyon. The road was leading them deeper into wonder. The river stretched wide and calm, carrying secrets in its current. She leaned against the railing, breathing in the steady rhythm of water. Memories of raising children surfaced as naturally as the ripples. Hope reflected back at her from the shimmering surface. Courage whispered that every season of life has beauty. They tossed small stones into the water, each carrying a silent wish. Her wish was for grace in aging, for creativity that never faded. His wish was for health and steady laughter. New beginnings can be born in quiet rituals. Purpose felt close, as if carried downstream. A sudden gust of wind stole her hat and sent it spinning. He chased it down the path, laughing with boyish delight. Strangers cheered as he returned, triumphantly holding it high. She laughed until her eyes filled with tears. Resilience sometimes looks like laughter in unexpected moments. Two hikers approached and offered trail mix with smiles. They swapped stories of roads traveled and lessons learned. Everyone had endured storms, yet kept walking forward. Hope glowed in these simple human connections. Courage is often just the willingness to share. Clouds gathered, and soon rain tapped softly against the awning. They found shelter together, sipping tea from their thermos. The downpour slowed the world into a peaceful hush. Life transformation often hides in moments of enforced stillness. She felt comfort in the gentle rhythm. When the rain passed, the river gleamed brighter. They walked slowly along the banks, holding hands in gratitude. The air smelled new, washed and alive. Resilience had turned delay into blessing. New beginnings felt as fresh as the damp earth beneath their shoes. That night, she wrote in her journal about water's wisdom. "It teaches me to let go and move forward," she wrote. He added, "and to carry what matters with strength." Purpose echoed in their reflections. As steady as the river, the journey felt richer with every passing mile. The desert stretched endlessly, a canvas of silence and light. They arrived at a dark sky park, greeted by a ranger with stories. Constellations shimmered above, ancient and guiding. She lay back on a blanket, eyes wide with wonder. Hope flickered like each star that pierced the darkness. The ranger's voice wove myths through the night air. Orion the hunter, Lyra the harp, Cassiopeia's proud crown. She felt like a child again, listening with awe. He pointed upward, naming patterns he remembered. Courage sometimes means allowing ourselves to marvel. As the night deepened, they layered sweaters against the chill. He poured cocoa from a flask, warming their hands. Silence enveloped them, not heavy but tender. New beginnings can be as simple as stillness under stars. Purpose seemed to stretch across the infinite sky. She whispered dreams that had lived quietly inside her heart. Painting, mentoring, writing letters that mattered. He shared his hope of guiding younger travelers, passing on wisdom. Life transformation often starts with words spoken aloud. Hope glowed brighter with every confession. A shooting star blazed across the horizon, and they gasped together. They didn't make wishes, they offered thanks. Gratitude felt bigger than any desire. Courage sometimes lives in accepting enough. The universe seemed to nod in agreement. Later, restless thoughts stirred in her chest. She worried about the responsibilities waiting back home. He listened patiently, suggesting small steps to ease her mind. Resilience is built on planning as much as dreaming. She felt lighter as she leaned into him. The Milky Way shimmered above their tent as they drifted to sleep. She whispered one last line into the night. The sky is endless, but so is possibility. He smiled, eyes closing with contentment. New beginnings had found them beneath the stars. Purpose wrapped them in quiet peace. The Pacific greeted them with silver light and crashing waves. She stepped onto the sand, shoes forgotten, toes sinking deep. The air smelled of salt and promise, bracing and alive. Hope filled her lungs with every breath. Courage called her to walk closer to the tide. Highway 1 unfolded like ribbon along the cliffs. They stopped at overlooks, gazing at water stretching forever. Pelicans skimmed the waves with effortless grace. New beginnings felt as wide as the ocean. Purpose shimmered on the horizon line, endless and free. Fog rolled in suddenly, swallowing the view in gray. He slowed the car, headlights cutting narrow paths. She rested her hand on his arm, steadying them both. Resilience grows when patience replaces frustration. Hope waited quietly until the road cleared again. At a roadside stand, flowers waited in buckets. She chose sunflowers for their bold faces. He picked lavender for calm, placed on the dashboard. They filled the car with fragrance. Life transformation often hides in simple beauty. Their smiles reflected the brightness of the blooms. They checked into a coastal inn with windows open to the sea. The sound of waves became their lullaby. They read quietly, letting the day soften around them. New beginnings sometimes ask for nothing but rest. Courage can mean slowing down. At dusk, the fog lifted, revealing a sky painted pink. They walked the beach, collecting smooth stones for pockets. Every step on the damp sand felt like renewal. Resilience hummed in rhythm with the tide. Hope glowed in the fading light. That night, they stood on the balcony, watching the moon rise. She whispered thanks for the gift of water's endlessness. He held her close, steady as the waves below. Purpose shimmered in their silence, vast and true. The ocean carried them gently into tomorrow. The skyline rose like a promise of endless motion. Lights sparkled across bridges and towers, alive with possibility. She felt both overwhelmed and energized, pulled into the current of people. He guided her hand as they crossed busy streets. Hope matched the pace of the city around them. In a small museum, paintings told stories of rivers and bridges. She paused before a quiet canvas of water, finding calm amid the noise. He admired a stormy landscape, feeling strength in its power. New beginnings often speak in art without words. Purpose shines through brushstrokes that outlast time. The subway stalled suddenly, leaving them in stillness. Some passengers groaned, others simply waited. She chose patience, leaning against him, feeling his calm steady her. Resilience grows when stillness is embraced instead of feared. Courage sometimes means breathing through the pause. They ate pizza in the park, pigeons begging shamelessly at their feet. Laughter spilled between bites, simple and unpretentious. The food, the city, the crowd all became part of the story. Life transformation does not need grandeur to be real. Joy hides in everyday meals shared. On a corner, a poet offered verses typed on an old machine. For a few dollars, he handed them words about courage and time. She tucked the poem into her wallet like treasure. New beginnings can be carried in a pocket. Hope folded itself into paper and ink. By late afternoon, fatigue pressed in like a shadow. They retreated to a small hotel, grateful for quiet. He rubbed her shoulders, easing away tension. She closed her eyes, whispering thanks for his care. Purpose sometimes means nurturing what you already hold dear. That night, the city lights glittered against the dark sky. She stood at the window, reflecting on all they had seen. "The world doesn't slow down," she said softly. He replied, "But we can choose how we walk through it." Resilience nodded silently in the hum of the city. They turned toward their old college town, curiosity pulling them back. Brick paths stretched beneath familiar trees, and echoes of youth stirred. She felt her heart swell at the sight of their first campus bench. He smiled, remembering long talks about futures unknown. Hope whispered that the past was still part of their story. Inside a small bookstore that smelled of old paper, the owner squinted, then grinned. "Still together after all this time?" she asked warmly. They laughed and nodded, their bond undeniable. New beginnings sometimes start with remembering where you began. Purpose glowed in the recognition of enduring love. At the pond, they found the very bench where he once proposed. The water rippled softly, as if sharing in their secret. She touched the worn wood, recalling her certainty that day. He leaned close, still grateful for her answer. Courage thrives when love remains steady across decades. Rain sprinkled lightly, and they shared an umbrella. She laughed at how little had changed in that moment. He kissed her forehead, their steps perfectly in sync. Resilience is not the absence of storms, but walking through them together. Life transformation continues with each shared step. They strolled past the dorms, older now but still familiar. Time had softened the edges of those buildings. She whispered thanks to her younger self for saying yes. He smiled, proud of the life they had built. Hope bridged the years in a single glance. Back in the car, they played old songs. Their voices blended with memories, creating harmony richer than youth alone. The road stretched forward, carrying their laughter along. Purpose hummed quietly in the background. New beginnings sometimes come from honoring the past. Sunlight spilled across the windshield as they left town. The past felt like a blessing tucked into their journey. She rested her head on his shoulder, content and thoughtful. Courage had carried them through time itself. Hope rode with them as they turned toward home. The house welcomed them back with gentle familiarity. The garden seemed taller, the walls warmer than before. She turned the key slowly, savoring the return. Inside, everything felt the same, yet somehow transformed. Life transformation had changed the way they saw it all. They unpacked slowly, placing souvenirs on the table. The river painting leaned against the wall, waiting for its place. The lighthouse print stood ready to guide them still. New beginnings can live even in familiar rooms. Purpose was stitched into every chosen object. A dripping faucet in the kitchen greeted them. Instead of annoyance, they smiled and fixed it together. He held the wrench while she tightened the seal. Resilience thrives in teamwork over small tasks. Hope can shine even in water drops. In the garden, basil had flourished and tomatoes had ripened. She bent to touch the soil, inhaling its freshness. He picked a handful of herbs, proud of the growth. Courage sometimes means cultivating where you are planted. The garden mirrored their own resilience. That evening, they cooked pasta with fresh leaves. Laughter filled the kitchen as the meal came together. At the table, they toasted to the road and to home. Joy tasted simple and profound at once. Purpose rested between their joined hands. Later, she opened her journal for the final entry of the trip. "Home is part of the journey," she wrote with care. He added, "Every arrival is a new departure." New beginnings were written into their story. Hope underlined the truth on the page. The house felt alive again, filled with light and love. She looked around and smiled, seeing it differently now. It was no longer just walls and windows. It was a place for renewal, for family, for courage. Resilience promised that the best was still to come. The doorbell rang, breaking the soft quiet of afternoon. She opened it to find her children smiling, arms wide with joy. Hugs filled the hallway, laughter spilling into every corner. The house, once silent, now pulsed with voices again. Hope bloomed in the air, like spring returning. In the living room, maps spread across the coffee table. Souvenirs lay scattered, postcards, smooth stones, and framed prints. They leaned forward, eager to hear every detail. She spoke of mountain mornings filled with mist and light. He described nights under stars that seemed infinite. The children listened with shining eyes, captivated by every story. They asked about challenges, about lessons learned along the way. She spoke of patience, of letting go, of finding peace in stillness. He added that purpose often hides in small victories. Courage had carried them, mile after mile. She showed them the river painting, flowing and calm. He pointed to the lighthouse print, steady and guiding. The children smiled, understanding without needing words. New beginnings had taken root even within these walls. Life transformation was visible in how they carried themselves now. Dinner came together with herbs from the garden, the table filled with warmth, clinking glasses, and gentle laughter. Stories overlapped as memories of the road met memories of home. Resilience tasted of food shared and love renewed. Hope lingered in every smile exchanged. Plans for the future began to take shape. A short weekend trip, this time with everyone included. The children promised to bring cameras and notebooks. She felt joy swell at the thought of new journeys together. Purpose grows stronger when shared across generations. As the night ended, goodbyes were long and tender. She stood at the door, heart full, watching them leave. He slipped his arm around her, steady and sure. The house was no longer quiet but alive with memory. New beginnings had come home to stay.